All right, welcome here to the Adobe Summit think tank. You're tuning into a special edition of SMACtalk Live, a podcast that myself, Brian Fanzo, and Daniel Newman host every single week, and we're doing it here live from the Adobe Summit. We're going to talk a little bit about the future of business and really the business experience. But before we get into that, Daniel, give people a little background on our podcast and kind of what they should expect for the next half hour.
Yeah, it was a really exciting opportunity to do this here. You know, we're here at Adobe Summit. We're working as Adobe insiders, influencers. And yesterday I was here participating in the bigger Adobe think tank where we talked about the future of experience business. Not really business experience, but how experiences are driving the future of business rather than products and services. So SMACtalk, and for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, the acronym social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. And it really started off as talking about these four major things and how they're helping businesses that are broaching digital change, how they're helping businesses that are preparing themselves for the future to be more successful. So having the chance to talk to this community at Adobe is really, really exciting because the long and short is Adobe is one of the most established companies on the planet when it comes to creative, when it comes to document, when it comes to marketing. And this week they launched their Experience Cloud. So for us to talk a little bit about SMAC right here in the middle of their launching of the Experience Cloud is just perfect. So
it is, and we broadcast this show live every week on Facebook Live. But I expected an impressive experience when I come to Adobe. This is by far the coolest lounge that we've ever recorded our podcast for, we've ever done episodes with. We've never had a think tank booth like this, so Adobe, we appreciate them kind of allowing us to take over there. But you know, kind of one of the things I wanted to kind of get into for this episode and really to preference is that you end up defending the marketers yesterday on this think tank because a lot of this discussion on the experience and what the experience means, and if the entire company is now in charge of experiences, does that mean that there's no such thing as a need for a marketer? And you immediately went to bat on that, and I thought that was a good place to kind of set the stage for what we're doing here at Adobe Summit.
Yeah, so let me paint the picture for you really quick, Brian, because when we did the think tank yesterday, there was 9 of us, and it was a moderated panel. Charlene Lee did a great job moderating it. But we kind of broke it up into these 3 silos, okay? It was data, design, delivery. You were there, but I'm just making sure everyone out there knows.
Yep.
And part of what we were trying to do was discuss the state of these 3 things, but part of what we were trying to do too was take some risks and make some kind of declarative statements about the state of marketing, the state of business, and how experiences impact it. So the first group that went was the design group, and their declarative statement, it was really profound. Now, a little background, right? There's been some research that recently came out that said something like about 9 out of 10 businesses are going to use experience as their competitive differentiator moving forward. Okay, that means not product, not service, experiences. So now we're in the land of Disney. Now we're in the land of Lyft and Uber, Airbnb, these companies that have kind of become known for creating great experiences. But for a lot of mom and pop companies, old companies, established industries, experiences are kind of a new thing in getting into it. So this first declarative statement that you mentioned to me, where I had to jump in and defend marketers, was they said they believe that the role of the marketer will become obsolete, more or less that marketers will go away. And my visceral gut response that was also backed by data is the CMO is becoming more and more important in implementing digital transformation. We've seen research show that they're actually being put in the position to lead digital transformation more and more often, and that overall, it's just logic too. If 9 out of 10 companies are competing on experiences, Brian, then how do you not market? Like if you stop marketing, then everybody's competing on the same thing. Marketing's actually going to become more important as all the businesses start competing on the same thing. That's my thought.
No, I thought it was interesting, and for those that are on the show, this is episode 74, so we've done 74 episodes of this show, and it's funny because our acronym is SMAC, Social, Mobile, Analytics, and Cloud. But one thing that we always say is in every single episode, no matter the topic, from cyber to cloud computing to data centers to all the things we talk about, is always always data, right? And I think the fact that backing up the data side of the marketer, but also the data's integrated role within the experience, right? The business experience. And what was that kind of discussion? I was jumping out of my seat. I was sitting behind a kind of a direct eye view of you those. And if you guys haven't seen that, make sure you check it out here on the Adobe Experience Cloud Facebook Live page. Very awesome video, couple 100,000 views up there on that 90-minute think tank. But data, the marketer creating experiences, telling stories, it also kind of walked down a path of privacy. And you and I talk a lot about privacy. My background in cybersecurity, both of us kind of living on the front edge. How did that privacy conversation go? Because it seemed to spark a little bit of interesting debate on the think tank.
Yeah, so the gentleman Ethan from Frog Design and I ended up having a nice little debate. And a show like that think tank really isn't going to be engaging. It's not going to captivate anybody if you don't have a little bit of debate. But he talked about this concept of people sort of filling a profile out that said, this is what I want my privacy to look like. And that in the future, the app developers, the data collection, the media companies would sort of have to abide by this privacy that people are expecting. Now, around the world, in Europe and in Canada, spam laws and data laws are different than they are in the United States. But overall, I basically, Brian, wanted to just start with one thing, and that's how many people download an app and read the privacy policy?
0.
So when he made this claim, it really kind of had the underpinnings of something bigger. Is while yes, transparency is important, and yes, people's privacy is important, how in the world do we ask people to get more involved and ask businesses to basically risk growth? Okay, because the data we're collecting helps grow. If the people who are saying they're worried about privacy are willing to do absolutely nothing to know more about it or defend it.
Which, and I think that's an interesting piece. Not only defend data and privacy, but also who's responsible for it. How transparent are you on the conversation? One of the interesting takeaways for me was that the idea, why don't we simplify the terms and services? Why does that read like a tax document? And the fact that no one's reading it, but if it read more like an app update, I think that's an interesting element. But I also like the idea of, this is an education problem, and I believe when it comes to privacy, we have to start and assume that everything is already public, right? And if you're using a free app, you're paying with your data. And you should just embrace the fact that your data is the currency that you're paying there. And then you're kind of backwards inning. And I think that's where this is kind of sparks a little bit of conversation. And I even think this is interesting with some of the announcements that Adobe made this morning, because a lot of what they were doing with the Experience Cloud is kind of integrating a lot of their modules into one dashboard and allowing a lot of this data to live in a place that's a little bit more actionable. And I think that's probably an interesting element of the business experience. But the last part I wanted to hit on the think tank, and it was one that you brought up, it was actually a question you asked, and the idea was, is it possible for us to drive incremental change on consumer behaviors around privacy without pausing innovation? Because at the rate of speed we talk about on the show all the time with change, if we're going this fast, we can barely keep up with the change. How is anyone going to keep up with the privacy laws and the privacy demands that are putting on the consumers?
Well, let's take a step backwards here. Okay, the whole idea of creating an experience business comes down to knowing your customer very well. We hear the word personalization all the time. And for us to get personal, for us to get deep with our customers, we have to know a lot about them. So all the tools you're talking about today, these dashboards, absolutely imperative to have a dashboard that gives you that customer view. They say the 360 customer. It's a little buzzy, it's a little idealistic, but with IoT sensor data and everything that we're giving to social data in our systems, companies have a lot of data on us. So to create this wonderful experience, we actually need that information. If we start pushing the privacy initiative forward and people start to feel the fear of giving that data, the opportunity for companies to give the experience becomes more difficult. In an example that's constantly used is Disney, right? The Magic Band. You connect your credit card, you show up, you put that band on, you walk all over the park. It's tracking everything you do. It allows you to spend money. It allows you to simplify your experience, plan your rides, get a drink when you get back to the hotel or a bottle of water. Everything you do is tied to that. It's extraordinarily personal. But what you've given up in exchange is basically they know where you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it with, how much you've spent, how much fun you're having. They're watching you, eyes in the sky, everything, every minute. And that's the trade-off. And I know you and I as kind of millennial guys have always said, you know what, we're willing to trade it off. That's why we don't read the terms, because we know they're not good. We know we're giving up a lot. But we feel, at least in our minds, we're getting enough value that it's worthwhile. So I'll make my declarative statement about your question, then I'm going to ask you a question. My declarative statement is, no, we cannot pause. We can push to educate on privacy, but we cannot pause what we're doing. People have to make a decision to wake up and become conscious of privacy, or they need to just accept, as they continue to use the app, the byproduct of that. So that kind of leads me, to a question for you about privacy as a whole. How do we solve the juggernaut that is privacy education while simultaneously becoming true experienced business companies?
I think it's a tough debate. I think the idea here comes down to, transparent view into where the data is being stored, how you're planning on using the data. I firmly believe that people will sign up every single day that says, if you're not using my data to sell me and market me, but you're using it to create a new experience, they're going to say, yes, here's all my data. But if you're going to use it to sell me, or you're going to use it to sell my email address to whatever email farm, and then it's getting passed around, and all of a sudden it goes outside of the constraints that I agreed to give it to, that's a worry. You have data breaches where I have to trust that not only you're securing the data, but where you're actually putting it. I like the idea of transparently giving this information, saying, hey, I'm storing your data, this is how long we're going to keep it, this is the correspondence we're giving it, because I think this idea of opting in is extremely important in the experience world. But we also have to remember, especially the digital natives versus the digital dinosaurs. Digital dinosaurs as a whole are really confused when the Facebook profile on the side all of a sudden has what their Amazon cart has on it, right? That to them is like, wait, how did they know that that's going on? Like, how did I share this data? And so I think part of the education comes down, I think it's the responsibility of the brand that's collecting the data to kind of add a more transparent view on it, but it's also up to the consumer to realize that it's kind of a risk versus reward portfolio. I think you have to decide, hey, there's a possibility of my experience increasing like this. The risk is if they got hacked or my data went somewhere else. I think that this is a weird experience, because as we focus more on experiences, I believe we're going to need more data. The data is going to be needed in real time. And all of these things, I talk about chatbots and like the hackability of chatbots, the more real time, the more stress we put on that data, the more opportunities for it to fall through the cracks, for it to be hacked. And I think this is an interesting trend that it's going to be interesting to watch, because you've written books on digital transformation, you talk on digital transformation. This idea of digital transformation from educating the clients is extremely important. We're here at Adobe Summit where we're able to walk around and kind of experience the creative aspect that's kind of behind that. I'm excited to see how they get creative in educating privacy moving forward.
It's interesting, Brian, we're here in Vegas, and one of the things I say about Las Vegas is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And then the next iteration of that was what happens in Vegas winds up on the internet. And yesterday, when we were asked to make those more declarative statements, those stronger statements, I made a few. In fact, one of them made headlines. You have to go back and watch. Go to adobethinktank.com if you want to watch it. But one of the declarative statements I did make in front of the group was that anything you do on the internet, you have to assume someone else sees. Basically anything you do. Anytime you're wired in, everything you're doing is being seen by someone else. Agree or disagree?
Agree completely. And I think if you take that approach, it allows you that freedom of understanding, like, hey, this is the risk, I'm going at it. But I also think if everything you post on the online, that's one thing. What about everything I connect to the internet, right? Like, we're here at the event, we walked around, we were throwing the football that has analytics tied into it. I have 46 devices in my Wi-Fi at my house, and there's not very many people in the house, right? I have so many connected devices from wearable tech. I think that the idea of what you're posting, it being public, easy. The question becomes, what data am I giving, right? What is Alexa capturing whenever they're not doing? I was walking around with Spectacles here at the event. What data is Spectacles collecting when I'm not even pressing the button that it's storing and reporting back? Is that data now being okay to be public? And I think that this is where I think this experience is probably interesting, because I'm willing to pretty much give up. What's the worst case scenario? They find out I don't sleep enough. I probably should walk more. I think this is that risk versus reward portfolio.
So let's talk about one more thing. So a lot of the experience business conversations that take place are about large enterprises. The examples we give are always huge companies, right? I mentioned before Disney or Coca-Cola, companies that supposedly create these magical experiences. Well, humongous marketing budgets, humongous advertising budgets. They have endless resources to create stories, and simultaneously they have tremendous revenue streams and business models. But if 90% of companies are saying they're going to compete on experiences, that means there's a lot of small businesses, a lot of medium businesses. Let's get actionable for a minute. What are we going to tell the small, mid-sized clients, the entrepreneurs that are watching our shows, the mid-sized 500 employee company out there or 50 employee company that's saying we want to be an experience business, we believe it's important to be an experience business. Where do they start, Brian? I mean, I have my ideas, but what are yours?
I think they start by walking the shoes of your customer and looking and saying defining what an experience is, right? We always talk about defining success first, working backwards after you're defining success, but define what the experience is that you want to create. What is the story? What is the emotions? I love the emotional conversations that we're having here at the think tank, as well as a couple of the booths here on the Summit Expo floor, because for me there's this element of, okay, if I can start understand the emotion that I'm getting. I don't want someone to be just feel happy or sad. I want someone when they leave here, they feel compelled to call their mom and say, Mom, I missed you, because of the experience they have. And I think when you're looking at this, it's saying, okay, if I want to enable this experience, this is what I want the end result to work like. And then I want to back into that and saying, what data can I get that would allow me to create that better experience? I'm a huge fan on the idea of asking, right? It's a weird world. It's amazing how many brands and businesses don't ask their customers what they want, and don't even ask their customers, hey, can I use this data? For me, when I walk into a store, if you're gonna, I always complain about the hardware store. I feel like this show, we always complain about hardware stores. If I walk into the hardware store, I like the idea that it's dynamically learning. And I think artificial intelligence is gonna help on that. There was a little bit of discussion on that today. But I think you start with defining the experience first, working backwards, and you start with small things, like changing the experience in small incremental ways. The idea, if you're still collecting email addresses on your brick and mortar store by a piece of paper that's on the machine, why not get an iPad and allow some opting in there, so now you're collecting it via digital, maybe you get one more piece of content, and kind of take baby steps as you go forward. But where do you think you kind of start for this experience side?
No, absolutely. I mean, first of all, and I don't want to repeat the things you said, but I think you're right.
You can if you want. It makes me sound smarter. I'll be okay with that.
You got to think outcome. You got to think a little bit about the outcomes you want. But what you said about asking the customers is important. And asking the customers can be a passive or an active engagement, meaning the active engagement for a lot of small businesses is just talking to your customers and asking them what makes a great experience. As companies get bigger and they have more customers, the engagement of finding out more about what their customers' needs becomes more passive. This is where data comes in. So companies deciding to become data-driven companies looking at cloud and what it can offer them. We're in a world now where companies, for a fraction of what it once cost, can be playing and doing major big data projects. They can be doing major marketing analytics that weren't possible because of clouds, because of things like Adobe Experience Cloud, because of the tools that have been made available to the market today. So you said they got to think outcomes, and I also think you have to decide that you're ready to commit. The fear of digital transformation, the fear of moving your business forward is paralyzing to a lot of companies, because it's the 7 most dangerous words in business, because it's always been done this way. And so many companies say, this is how we've made money, and we're still making money.
And it was my favorite slide on the opening keynote today at the summit was, transformation is an all-in game, right? Like, it is either all in or all out. You can't put one foot in, and I think experience is that same way, right? You have to be able to, if you're gonna dedicate your resources, you're gonna, you wanna go this way, it does have to move that direction. And one of the things I wanted to kind of also touch on, you did a lot of customer testimonials on stage today, right? During the very long opening keynote this morning. And they had T-Mobile up there. We're both very big fans of T-Mobile, how they're very embracing social, transforming their kind of customer experience. What role, you've written a book, your second book was on customer experience. Where do you see customer experience, digital transformation, and then the experience business, right? Like, these are 3 different, I'd say, avenues that seem to be throwing around, but are they kind of molding into one, which is this business, or is this kind of a separate world where it's customer experience, transformation of your digital business, and then creating a experience business?
Well, I think it always starts with the business objective. And when I talk about digital transformation, so people say you have to decide that the business objective is to be customer centric. The business objective is to create great customer experience and to make money while doing it, because businesses need to be profitable. And that's one of the things that sometimes people get a little idealistic, like, oh, we need to be so about the customer. Well, you need to be so about the customer, but you simultaneously need to figure out how to be all about the customer and still be profitable. And again, this is where tools, analytics, data, measurement, and of course the qualitative stuff you're talking to your customers, having a good customer service department. One of the things I said yesterday in my defense of marketing is not only that marketing will survive, but that in the experience-ready organization, every employee of a company is a marketer. Because that touch point, that friction that can be created in a bad experience, it's up to the customer service person, the ops person, the retail floor person, the person you pick up when you call on the phone and you have an issue and travel. They're all the ones that are going to break down and create that memorable experience for you. So you digitally transform to become ready to thrive in this new economy. You become customer-centric because people are overwhelmingly telling you that they want memorable, personalized experiences that make them feel more connected to the brand, and they become evangelists, or they become word of mouth, or at the very least, they have a more positive sentiment about your brand than before. So you're not becoming an experience business because it's cool. You're becoming an experience business because in the age of data, with this wealth of information, we've essentially reached a time where people expect more. Consumer requirements are changing fast, so you have to be highly adaptable, your rate of change has to be fast, and you have to be experience focused, because that's what leads to those business objectives that really are the marquee points of making a digital transformation.
And I've been saying, my favorite quote to say on stage, if Henry Ford was alive today, and he said, if he would have asked them, they would have said faster horses, not a car. I believe today's consumer will tell you everything they want, where they want it, how they want it, and we have the data there. So there's about 5 minutes left. We're going to kind of wrap up kind of our experience here, and thank you guys for Adobe letting us kind of take over the Facebook Live here. By far, we've done 74 episodes of this show. By far, our most creative and beautiful place to record one of these episodes for. One of the things that for me that is a takeaway, trust. I mean, I talk, the 3 T's or something that seem to come up every episode on our show: trust, training, and tools. I think the experience business, trust is actually more important than it's ever been in business, because I think now that risk level is, if you don't start with trust and you throw technology at people problems and it fails in the experience element, that failure seems to be a higher takeaway. So it's an interesting piece there, but I guess the closing remark, what would you say, what's the thing that we're kind of walking forward for this event? Excited to be here. This is our first Adobe Summit. We go to a lot of tech events, 50 probably a year. When you're looking at like a creative company, a company that's announced a partnership with Microsoft, where do you see, what's the takeaway that the audience that maybe is listening on iTunes or watching here on Facebook Live can really walk away with?
And I had a chance to prepare for this because I answered this question yesterday.
You did.
And there were a lot of really good takeaways for me. I'm going to give you 2. The first takeaway was there is no magic bullet for creating an experience business. Part of being in the data age and in the age of personalization is your business is also unique. And therefore the experience you want to create is unique. And it's up to you to leverage the tools, the technology, and build the trust of the consumers. There's your 3 T's. The second is technology is an underpinning. Technology needs to run transparently in the background. I can throw 100 more buzzwords into a single sentence.
Could you please? Buzzword bingo at home. If you're playing buzzword bingo at home, you literally have the full card.
Not going to do it. We need to think about technology as something that people overwhelmingly are scared of. And I told you there was that study in the Atlantic where people rated the things that they feared most. And more people fear technology and privacy and data than death on this Atlantic study. So that's all I got to say about that. Companies continuously throw technology out in the front and say technology is magic. It's the magic. But what makes the magic band magic is that nobody knows the technology. It just works. Even the iPhone, it's about the fact that anybody can pick it up intuitively and use it. So as companies are putting technology into their products, into their services, into their experiences, it shouldn't be in the foreground. Correct. The technology should be in the background unless your very business is technology. Otherwise, it's all about what experience does that technology enable you to create for the consumer. I overwhelmingly believe that, but just like what I said before, no magic bullet, Brian. There's nothing out there that simply will allow people to accomplish this, but starting with data, starting with an outcome, I think are a couple of really good areas that companies can start to investigate today.
And I love it, and I love the theme here with, with data, design, delivery, understanding the experience, really focusing on not only creating experience, but I would say everyone listening and watching, no one likes to be marketed to, no one likes to be sold to, but I think everyone will sign up to say, give me an experience that makes me feel something, educates me, inspires me, motivates me. This was a fun episode to record. Episode 74, we've done these all around the world, Barcelona, lots of different places, Las Vegas, in the Adobe think tank. A lot of fun. Thanks to the team over there at Adobe. Daniel, as always, we enjoy talking smack, sometimes from our home, Chicago and Washington, D.C. If you like this podcast, you want to check it out, just search SMACtalk in any of your podcast players. It's available, all 74 episodes. But I think we're going to kick it back to them, and we will be letting everyone know here. We'll be back for additional content, some more live streams from this beautiful think tank here in the Adobe Summit throughout the rest of the day. Moving forward, for Brian Fanzo, Daniel Newman, it was a pleasure, my friend.